And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Oh, here we go again. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Toronto Till I Die, the show for Toronto FC fans talking everything TFC. This week, we're discussing a wild back and forth MLS Cup final. Was it the best game ever? We'll have a little debate about that. Now that the MLS season's over, let's talk about Toronto FC's offseason in general. What's going on? What are the priorities? We'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, let's just wrap all the Canadian men's national team in bubble wrap. Can we just get Canada Post, Crown Corporation, send all the bubble wrap out? We don't want any more players getting injured. So we'll talk about some injury risk. We'll talk about Max Crepeau a little bit, but we'll also chat a bit about roster drops because that's coming real soon. And we're also going to answer all those burning questions that you have been sending us in Twitter land out there. We have a jam-packed show, so let's get right to it. My co-hosts, as always, Michael Singh and Jeffrey P. Nesker. Gentlemen, how was your weekend?
Well, Jeff's trying to figure out his internet.
Yeah, that was my whole weekend. My whole weekend was back and forth on the phone with my ISP trying to figure out my internet. Occasionally trying not to doom scroll Twitter as it dies a slow heat death, and every time I did, I got Mikey Singh at his other job with Sharms dropping bombs everywhere about this and about that and about retiring and so on and so forth. And then of course the Saturday that was the collective almost heartbreak of all of Canadian men's national team supporters with a nice little interlude Sunday morning of Arsenal back on the top of the table. I keep wanting to wear a kit, but I know that if I do and they start losing, everyone's going to blame me. So I think I'll wait until we win the championship or win the premiership, and then I'll wear an Arsenal kit on the show.
You'll never wear that Arsenal kit again.
All right, maybe I'll change my plans a little bit. But yeah, all in all, a pretty crappy weekend. I mean, didn't get to enjoy too much of the weather because I was on hold with tech support the whole time. But check it out, guys. Here I am. It's not flickering. My audio isn't cutting out. My wife can work from home again. Fingers crossed that nice. I solved the puzzle. I solved these riddles 3. So,
did you hear that new Drake song? Or I mean, they obviously dropped the album, but the song had the shouting at Arsenal potentially winning the Premier League.
Oh no, we're doomed. We're doomed.
Well, I think it was 21 Savage who technically dropped the line.
But okay. Because we all know the Drake curse. Yeah. No. Sorry, that's a bad idea. Why isn't he a Man U fan? Come on, Drake. What do you need to jump on this bandwagon? Yeah, he's an everybody fan, and then they lose. I think he's a Philadelphia fan, and look at what happened to them over the weekend. So, yeah, no, let's not do the Drake stuff. Plus, what does he want to have anything to do with me? I can't even pronounce his clothing company properly. I still, every time I go to do it, you know what I mean? Like you and I, we're not going to.
It's just the letters, Jay. It's just the letters.
What'd you say?
I want to say Ovo. I mean, what? Come on, guys. Come on. But anyway,
sounds like a bad Netflix series.
Yeah, it was a bad. It really that was a bad Netflix series. I hope your weekends were better than mine, gentlemen. That's all.
Mine was good. Yeah, man, a lot of footy, a lot of outdoor time too. I found outdoor time with all that footy going on, which is dope. I
unbelievable
Renegade Canada swag.
Sweet.
I'm going with the Renegade line from the Canadian men's national team.
I love that the Renegade line is from Adidas, which is potentially a bigger company than Nike, but that's besides the point. Did you search it out at a deep discount, or did you just drop the needle and
I know a buddy got it for me.
Okay.
So
good stuff.
I just grabbed it when I could because I'm a renegade. So let's do.
What's your report on that crew neck? What would you give it out of a 10?
It is really comfortable. Like I'm in my house and it's worn up comfortable. It's great.
Okay.
Sponsored by Adidas.
That's good.
Yeah. Pause for the cold read. One good thing about my weekend is the first time I've ordered Chinese food in a long time, and I forgot that it's a 2-day affair. No, man, it's a 2-day affair. Like there is no way you're finishing that order the night of.
Well, that's the point.
It is. Well, I mean, I forgot. I was like, "Holy crap! How much lemon chicken is in this thing?" It was like a bottomless pit of lemon chicken. And guess
That's
what?
why you get
Guess
it,
what,
man, because
boys?
you've got like days and days of leftovers in the
Guess
fridge.
guess what? But I think our order was crap. We got crispy beef, lemon chicken, and chicken balls, and a little bit of rice. That's a whole lot of stuff without any noodles or rice or stuff.
That's how they get you, man.
Oh,
That's how
you
they
Yeah,
get
we
gotta
went
get
out
at
of
least,
rice.
like,
Yeah, you
one
got to get a
rice.
noodle dish.
That's how they get you.
Absolutely. We screwed
Yeah.
up. We screwed up.
And Mikey, how's the weekend?
Buddy, honestly, I'm liking Jeff's weekend. Honestly, I wish I was there.
You really
Um,
weren't. You really weren't.
No, you know what? We went out on Friday night. Like we did karaoke, me and a bunch of coworkers.
Nice.
Oh, I saw the
Man,
video.
I got so banged up that night that I was completely written off on Saturday. I haven't had one of those nights where like the next day you're just flat out
Yeah.
KO'd, like full on couch day, which actually was amazing because there was a lot of soccer on. Weird 11 o'clock kickoffs, by the way.
I
in the
know,
Premier League.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it was a
know
weird
how I felt
11
Because
about
they
that.
because we do the time change. I think it's the UK hasn't done the time change yet, right? So or something like that.
Yeah, something
Usually
like
around the time
that.
change.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't make too much sense to me, but worked out because it was a nice little couch day. Had some more sports to watch at night, and Saturday, honestly, or sorry, Sunday with the time change and everything like that. I got up early to watch that Arsenal Chelsea game, Jeff,
Mm-hmm.
and followed by my Manchester United, which I wish I could fast forward because that was just brutal.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal.
And then obviously Liverpool, which was a big win against Tottenham. So a lot of Premier League.
Thanks,
soccer,
Liverpool.
yeah, seriously. So yeah, lots of footy, and then I went out to I don't know if you guys have been there, but it's essentially down the lakeshore towards Humber. There's like a nice little lookout that essentially you can see like the view of Toronto from the West End. So
Yep.
that was my outdoors time. Did a nice little hike out there and had a
Man.
nice view of the city. So it was good.
Everybody
man,
got to
good.
go outside except for me. It was like Pando 2.0 for me. That I was chained to my desk, listening to soft rock on hold for hours at end, just getting more and more upset. But yeah.
How can you get upset?
Exactly.
How can you get upset with all that Michael McDonald in your ear, man?
No, I can't get upset with Michael McDonald in my ear. But when it was anything else, Michael McDonald is what kept me sane. Because obviously, What a Fool Believes is the greatest song ever written in the history of music. But it was all the other faff that I couldn't handle. When I got the "You're Making My Dreams Come True," the Hall & Oates thing, I was ready to throttle somebody. I mean, that on hold music is no good. But I realize you said jam-packed show, and we've talked about absolute BS for about 15 minutes
Dave
now.
is
So
putting us in our
Dave's
place.
telling us we're talking too much Premier League and all the good players that come from Italy. So let's get into it, gents. All right, so this weekend MLS Cup 2022 was on. LAFC versus Philadelphia Union from Bank of California, which is soon not to be the Bank of California. It's getting a new title sponsor, so that's going to be weird.
Of course it is.
But an enthralling game. 3-3 after full time, after added time, and of course, Philadelphia with maybe one of the historically worst penalties
unbelievable
ever taken in a penalty shootout.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Lose the MLS Cup to LAFC, who I think were like deserved winners if you look at the entirety of the season. But guys, just want to get your thoughts on a crazy, like a nuts final. That might be the best MLS Cup final. We'll get to best game ever. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, the hyperbole is strong with this one. I mean, like, it's certainly recency bias, right? Like, it hasn't even been a week. You know what I mean? To contextualize it. Was it a great game? Absolutely. Was it the greatest MLS Cup final in the history of MLS Cup finals? I mean, I'm a homer, so I've obviously got at least one that I prefer, possibly
2016.
3 that I prefer. Well, I was at 2016, and despite the ending, it was still pretty exciting. 2017 to me will always be the greatest MLS Cup final ever played. But in terms of enjoyment, yeah, that was a pretty bonkers game. It felt like the El Traficos of old, and certainly I think the icing on the cherry on top is that the second string goalkeeper, the guy that had to sub in for Maxime Crepeau, who our our thoughts and prayers go out to as he nurses what looks to be a pretty devastating injury, ends up getting man of the match. Just the context of that. I mean, he lost his job to Andre Blake. They bring him in, and I'm in like 5 or 6 text conversations across all the different social medias, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was my friend Gav, who was like, "This guy's finished, man. This is his career's over. He's going to capitulate." And I go, "I'm pretty sure they've said on the broadcast. I mean, I'm not sure if they're saying it on the Sky rebroadcast, but this guy's like a PK specialist. He's an assassin for PKs." And then you add on the fact of where he came from and who he lost his job to. I mean, if you had written it out, they would have said, "No, that's way too on the nose. That's way too on the nose. You can't do that. You can't have the guy that lost his job to Andre Blake sub in for injury for PKs and then just blank Andre Blake, who, by the way, was the goaltender of the year this year." I mean, it's just too perfect, but it's also way too convenient. And then that Gareth Bale header, my goodness. I mean, I'd be willing to entertain the argument that he was worth every bit of money, every bit of ink spilled, every bit of faff, just to come on as a substitute and do that for his team in an MLS.
Well, that's why you sign him, right? That's why you sign big name players in this league that seem to be over the hill, right? Like that's why TFC go out and spend the money that they do, and other clubs, Atlanta, LA, New York, well, not so much Red Bulls, but they'll go out and spend that kind of money because okay, he could be crap for most of the year, but he can give you that one moment and you just win MLS Cup. Like they were done, right? Before that,
they were done. They were done. I thought they were done. I thought I was going to be capitulating to Mikey because Mikey picked Philly. Like, sorry, you were right. I was wrong. And I'm telling you, one of my group chats was like, "No, Bale scoring the equalizer." And I laughed until I started laughing for real because it actually happened. Listen, I could write an essay on that whole situation. You don't have you don't necessarily have teams in top tier leagues signing guys just to come in on an offhand chance that they're going to do that kind of magic in a single elimination game. You know what I mean? And all I was thinking was that scene from Dumb and Dumber where, it's like, just when I think you can't do anything dumber, you do this and completely redeem yourself, which is, is what I was saying after Bale, because he's had a dog's season. He couldn't even get on the field, right? Like, how many times was he warming up in the sidelines for like some academy kid? I mean, not academy kid, but like some
down.
No,
the
he
stretch,
didn't.
Right? Like, he wasn't even.
He was
and it didn't look like
he
didn't look like he was going to see any game action at all. And I was very surprised that he got subbed in at that point. He got subbed in for Vela for all the people to get subbed in for. So obviously they knew something that we didn't, because what a magical moment. And I do think a hell of a lot of the hyperbole that's being spilled right now about how good this game was is off the back of just how wonderful a moment that was for Gareth Bale in Los Angeles.
Go ahead, Mikey.
City Football Club.
You wanted to jump in here.
No, what's funny is we were talking about this on 442 today, and admittedly, Sharm, Sarah, and Albert, they're not the biggest like MLS watchers on a daily basis, but they obviously watched this final because it was on at a great time and it was a final, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing that we got to just talking about over and over and over again was Gareth Bale. Like Gareth Bale is what people are talking about. And if I am Don Garber, I am so happy about that.
You could tell MLS right there.
Yeah.
You see the guys in the MLS box being, "Oh, thank God."
Thank God. Yeah. Now we don't have to do a post-mortem. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll tell you this.
He's gonna be there next season, right? It's not like it's just.
I don't think so. Think so. Honestly, I think that you retire off the back of a decent performance for your Welsh national team, and that goal as your last club action. That's a fitting epithet for a great career. I lost.
That's another thing, Jeff.
Yeah,
but that's another thing. Gareth Bale will go down as like one of the most clutch players of all time. Like he's had so many big moments. You think about the couple of Champions League games that he played in as well, the moments that he had in those finals, and then you also this, and there's a couple other more tournaments that we were talking about today that Gareth Bale stepped up and won big, and just he has to be one of the most clutch players of all time.
Mike, can I ask this?
Yeah.
Why do you think Gareth Bale is coming back?
Because he said he wanted to be here for the long term. I hear as an LAFC, because he's under contract and his spot turns into a DP contract next season. So I don't have a reason to doubt that he would be coming back. I still think he has some left in the tank as well.
Oh, I don't disagree. I just think that if he has even a moderately good performance for Wales in the World Cup, the temptation to go out on a high as opposed to go through, what's been a kind of cyclical story in his career of limited minutes and lots of doubt from the fan base and from his gaffer and stuff like that. Maybe he just wants to get off the ride and go play golf. You know what I mean? Like it seems to me that, if you have to, this is a great ending narrative. So the temptation might be too high for him in terms of just saying, this is what a way to go out, go out on top, Seinfeld style. So
for sure. But I think he's in LA, as soon as he arrives in LA, he never speaks Spanish when he's in Madrid, comes to LA and does his first interview. It's in Spanish. I think he's actually kind of happy to be in the States and doesn't have to have the same spotlight as he would in Madrid, or if he went back to the UK or played in England. So I could see him maybe coming back. And then of course, as a DP, I would suspect that he would start a lot more than he did.
Here's my issue. I mean, if you're getting very limited minutes, right, but you still have to be in like match fitness, isn't that a slog? Especially for like a cult of personality like Gareth Bale. If he's not playing as a day in, day out starter and yet still has to train that hard at his age, wouldn't he just get sick of it? You know what I mean?
But I think like his character, like from what you read about him, there's never been a question of like, does he want to train? Does he work hard? I don't think that's a question about him. I think it really came down
he had a
to
goal.
A really bad relationship with Madrid and their board and with Florentino.
Not necessarily not his fault, but
not his fault. Not his fault at all in a lot of ways. So
I was saying the opposite. I think he antagonized them quite a bit while he was there, but that's besides the point.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
I
don't think like we'll move really quickly off of Gareth Bale. Just really quickly into something TFC fans are not going to want to hear. But was this the best MLS game ever? I mean, we're all biased. I think all three of us sat through that Montreal second leg semifinal. A lot of us will have a personal attachment to that game and say that was the greatest of all time.
Absolutely.
What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, you changed the question. It was, it's being billed as the best MLS Cup ever. If we widen that
some
to the
people are
best
saying
MLS
it's the best
game ever,
MLS game ever. Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Based on the
because
stakes.
of that. Because based on the stakes,
two number one seeds going at it. The league finally brings in Bale. They finally bring in Chiellini. They bring in all these superstars, and it's two contrasting sides the way they were built. LAFC obviously buying a lot of names, whereas the Union were, building a lot of homegrown talent and building a roster, maybe conventional, unconventional. I'm not sure which really. Where it
has to be unconventional because there's a lot of teams that don't spend, that don't end up anywhere near Philadelphia's level of success.
Right. So the narratives are there. Yeah,
but I mean, Eastern Conference semifinal or Eastern Conference final, 2 legs between, the cold firm derby. Come on. I know it's local homer bias, but nothing's ever going to top that.
That's also another thing. That was 2 legs, right? I think that takes away. The second leg is obviously like ridiculous. But that also takes away from the argument a little bit because the second leg isn't as good without what happened in the first leg.
Exactly. And I also think, to Mike, to your point, the narratives that you talked about for this cup final, a lot of those transfer over to Montreal, Toronto. 2 different teams at the time still to this day build their rosters in 2 very distinct different ways, right? One is going to always spend money, the other's looking for value. And I think that just and also, I mean,
wasn't Drogba in 2016 though?
No,
wasn't that when they were getting Nesta, Drogba?
He didn't start the game.
Yeah, Drogba was 2016, absolutely.
Yeah, but he didn't start the game. Remember, he
didn't start the game. But I remember heckling him when he did a corner kick.
But I
that
think
ended up being his
but I
last
think
action as a
even
player.
yeah, of course, Drogba was a big money signing. But I mean, look, we had Javinko and Altidore and Bradley. We brought in all these other guys that were MLS veterans, and they were really building a sort of a workman roster in a lot of ways. So I think that still stands as, to me, the greatest MLS game. And I guess it's mainly because I look at the first leg and the second leg as one whole 180-minute sort of game. This is a close second, though, of games I've seen, because I think that just in terms of the stakes you talked about. Look, when Elliott puts in that goal, that third goal, I'm like, LA's done. They're flat on their back, right? They
Did you
got
guys see what Philadelphia tweeted after Elliott scored?
Oh,
the
yes.
screenshots of it.
Yeah.
Elliott like greater than Bale.
Yeah.
Oh,
That did not age well. But,
that's a quick delete.
Yeah. But I mean, like that. I mean, I think just behind that all, I think that it makes it a really great game. And look, you talk about narratives and storylines and big things around games like that. You want a cup final for your league to have that, right?
100%.
And
1,000,000%.
You're talking, Mike, about recovering from this weekend. Well, I was recovering last Monday from a cup final itself, and it had its own narratives, right? And it had its own sort of, obviously maybe not at the same exact level, but in terms of, you have this team that has won all the time versus this team that was dead last a year before and came to the top in Atletico Ottawa, battling in front of 15,000 people with one of the biggest crowds in CPL history, right? Like, those narratives matter. And I think the reason that I'm still going to pick Montreal-Toronto is all the narratives around that game, even leading up to it. Toronto-Montreal, it was going to be the first Canadian team to make an MLS Cup final one way or the other. It was just all of that was building up, the historical sort of rivalry between the two cities. All of that was building up to that two-leg final. And it was the first time also. Remember, this is back when the Canadian men's national team were still not great. It was the first time you could really say that a football match in Canada really started to garner the attention of the broader nation outside of just the two cities that were involved. Because I remember the hype around that game, and I'm being like, why do all these people outside of Toronto and Montreal are watching and caring and talking about it? Like, that was the first time I felt it really on a national level for a club match in this country.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to bring up Beckham playing at Skydome, but that was more of a Toronto thing. Like in the city proper, you couldn't get a ticket for any money at any price. But no, it didn't have the same sort of legs nationally as the Eastern Conference final did.
Is that just a personal bias?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's so much of a personal bias. So much of a personal bias.
Because we're Toronto, Montreal. Is that because we're from Toronto, and is that because we're Canadian, that we know what that means to the country and the nation? We're looking at this just from a soccer perspective too. It's debatable. That final was crazy. It was
crazy.
100%.
Especially the fact that it was a final too. It wasn't a semis. It wasn't a quarter. It was a final.
Yeah, it was a win and go home. And coming into this 10-year Apple deal, you're going to see this game promoted to within an inch of its content, just because it is a perfect stepping stone to try and accrue more fans, especially as they make this change over to a centralized model. I mean, they're like pigs in S at MLS.com because they've got such a strong single game to sort of use as a advertising content. So credit to them. It couldn't have worked out better for them.
Fair enough. And Mike, to answer your question, yes, there is bias there. Obviously, there's a bit of bias there, but I don't think that's necessarily a detracting thing from it. Like, I think you can have bias, but also objectively look at, what stakes were for that game. I mean, MLS itself at the time was highly promoting this game. Because I think Seattle, Colorado was the Western final at the time. And the major storyline out of that was Tim Howard, I think, was retiring. But aside from, that, like the focus was on that series, both from a Canadian perspective, but also from a league perspective as well. And in many ways, it's still called, the greatest MLS playoff game of all time. It's up there rated.
Playoff series. Yeah.
playoff series.
Yeah,
Yes,
playoff
of course.
series,
I mean,
yeah.
you're going to have the misnomer between a final and a series, obviously, because one-offs versus two legs.
Exactly.
But I think you're right. I think it's debatable, but I mean, I'm always going to probably put Montreal, Toronto just above that, but it's close.
Personally, me, because it meant more to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, meant more to me. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, this is all very subjective depending on who you
Yeah.
talk to. If you're talking a bunch of TFC fans and a bunch of people who cover the team, you're probably going to hear
Montreal is just like, the cup finalists here, greatest ever. Forget that other one. That doesn't exist.
Yeah. Exactly. The 2015 where we beat him 3-0 and sent him home packing. So LAFC deserved champs. You have here 6 different teams do a Shield Cup double. 8th time it's happened overall. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying to Mikey during the Festival of Internet Pain last week, that was the show last week, I felt LAFC were kind of a team of destiny this year, mostly because they had such a strange season. I mean, they were world beaters coming out of the gate, and then they upgraded and got worse, and then they had to figure out how to play again. And you know, like Matt Doyle says in his postmortem for LAFC, they became a team that you can't game plan for, because whatever box you put them in, and this is, I'm paraphrasing him, but whatever box you put them in, they find a way to get out of the box and still find a way to kill you. So, you know, that's crazy. But then you consider some of the stats on the other side, like that run of 11 games where Philadelphia was like just massacring teams, just scoring like 6-1 wins, you know, like I think they had like a plus 37 goal differential or something over an 11 game span. You know, that's a hell of a matchup. But and again, you got it in the rundown. A hell of a tough day for Philly to go from losing MLS Cup in PKs to crashing out of the World Series. Sucks to be a sports fan in that town over the weekend. But I have an issue with even the question that you end this segment with, which is, was this Philly's last chance? I'm not so sure. They've proven that they have a sustainable model with respect to selling on and re-upping teams. Almost they're almost Seattle in that way. You know, everybody always asks questions like, "Oh no, what's happening? Chad Marshall's going to leave. Oh no, what happens when Ozzie Alonso, you know, hangs up his boots or moves away?" And Seattle seems to be just fine at finding plug and play replacements from various different methods. And I think while Philadelphia doesn't have the spending power that Seattle does, they're going to be okay. You know, they lose guys and they replace guys all the time. And then further to that, you know, is this Philly's last chance, you know, bundled into the fact that MLS is changing? Well, is it changing that much? I mean, we still had a bunch of teams that didn't land, you know, made bad bets on DPs and TAM signings that are now stuck with the same kind of bad contracts that we've been talking about over the last couple of years. You know, is this been such a sea change in MLS, you know, that in 2023, a team that's built such the way as Philadelphia has been built for the last little while will no longer be competitive? I don't know if I can say that outright. So,
yeah, I asked the question because there's been so much discourse on whether or not Philadelphia has to spend, or teams like Philadelphia, I should say, have to spend. And I think TFC fans have been using it in the context of this club and how we choose to build our roster. But no, I don't think it's Philadelphia's last chance. One, they're not losing a ton of guys, right? A lot of guys are under contract that are main guys on that team for next season.
And the guys that stepped up this year are all young guys. That
and the guys are selling
ceiling,
like a Paxton Erickson, a McGlynn, stuff like that. Like, they were on the periphery of the team.
Yeah,
they're just selling them because they're young players that have some value,
have an upside.
European clubs want them, so they're going to actually have money in the bank. Not a ton. I mean, I think they're talking about Paxton Erickson going to Frankfurt for $4 million, maybe. But
well, like, look at it this way, Mike. Like, we got rid of Priso. I'm using Priso as an example, but I can use Schaffelberg as another example, right? Simply because of the way our roster's built. You know, we've got guys in their position booked for the next 5 years, and the next 5 years is our window to be competitive. So waiting around for the Schaffelbergs and the Prisos to develop into the Mark Anthony K's that we can already get and be competitive just didn't work for us, right? It's a very different model than Philadelphia, where it's like, we've got guys in the chamber ready to go. Like it's an assembly line kind of situation. And I'm wondering what Mikey Singh has to say about that. Like, because there has been a lot of chatter, right? Like this is the last year that a team that's built along the lines of Philadelphia is going to be competitive in MLS 8.2 or whatever the case may be. And I kind of call BS on that. And I wonder if you agree.
Well, this has been the narrative with Philadelphia every single year. And for whatever reason, they're able to defy the logic that is you lose so many players that are very important to your team, yet you have guys that are able to step in and replace it. And I think that's a really big testament to the system that Jim Curtin has put into place there.
1,000,000%.
And Ernst Tanner, right? Ernst Tanner.
Ernst Tanner, yeah.
Ernst Tanner too. But like specifically Jim Curtin, because it's plug and play essentially. And the guys that are being put into those positions really understand what they're being asked to do. And I think that's huge for a young kid, where you get that clarity, the instructions, and it's very there's not that much chaos. There's not much that much unpredictability. Where it's ironic I'm saying that, because Philadelphia's system is based off sort of unpredictability.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the Red Bull's light kind of system.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But for kids going in there, they understand what the job is at task, and there's not many teams in MLS that are able to do that on a consistent basis, deploying really inexperienced names and inexperienced youngsters and getting results. There's maybe the Red Bulls you can throw in that category, but the Red Bulls haven't won a playoff series. Maybe.
And Graham writes right here, which is the perfect postscript, but have they won a cup? Which leads me to the question, is their ceiling competitive, but when the chips are down, because it's a lot of young players that maybe don't have the experience in big game matches.
If Gareth Bale doesn't score a 128th minute header, we're not.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
That's one MLS Cup.
So many.
And I think I would also just temper that by saying, like, just because they didn't win MLS Cup doesn't mean they did not have a good season. They had a really great season.
Sometimes I ask rhetorical questions like this to get the answers that I want.
Exactly. And I think LAFC, they pushed LAFC all the way to the brink to try to win the Shield, right? There was a good chance that Philly could have won the Shield, because LA went on a dip near the end of the season and picked it up at the end. So to say that, they haven't won a cup. Yes, true. They did not win the cup. But right now they built a model that I think is actually going to keep them competitive for a lot longer than a lot of people think they will.
And here comes Graham again but that's why you pay for the game breakers. So is the chink in Philly's armor that, they can't afford they don't have the influence and they can't afford the kind of deal like Gareth Bale coming to you for a year on TAM.
Think about
because they're not LA.
Think about the number of names that were big name players and never succeeded in Major League Soccer. Like 100%, look at guys like Xherdan Shaqiri, big name player, Bastian Schweinsteiger,
Steven Gerrard,
Rooney, CVG, Frank Lampard, Pirlo. Like we go through this list over and over. It's just a matter of it. It worked for LAFC, right? The ball bounced in their court on that specific day at that specific moment. But this isn't to say every time you go out and you get yourself a Gareth Bale, you're going to win an MLS Cup.
Yeah.
But in macro, just do you think that there's some validity to what Graham is saying? Is Philly ignoring the one thing that can maybe the Drew Moore effect that can maybe get them the championship, which is having some more elite veteran in their lineup for just that moment?
Yeah, and this sort of segues nicely into sort of our next conversation, which is TFC's
I know it
does. But, yes, of course, you want to get those kind of players to be game breakers for you, but you don't necessarily have to pay $15 million a season to get that.
Well, they
player.
can't.
They can't. But you can also find DPs that are going to fit within the ecosystem of what you're trying to build in your club, right? A lot of MLS teams have done that, and they don't necessarily. Now, I'm not saying boo to Toronto FC spending that kind of money on Lorenzo Insigne. If you can do it for sure. But if that's not the way you're building a club, then you can find DP players. Like look at like a guy like Hani Mukhtar, who's MVP, right? Look at like a guy like Sebastian Driussi, right? Like you can find those guys that can fit in your system and then be really big impact players. They just don't all have to be Gareth Bale or an Insigne or Bernardeschi or things like that. Right? You can find other players that can do that. And Philadelphia have done that really well, right? They've found those guys that fit within their system and fit within their budget, who then get them to the top of the East in touching distance of a Shield, and literally a Gareth Bale header away from winning MLS Cup and doing that.
Stupid header. An absolutely, I mean, that header had teeth and clenched fist. I mean, it was only going in the back of the net. It was so much fun to watch. I love headed goals. But yeah, I appreciate that, because I don't, as much as I get a little iffy about the hyperbole, like best MLS Cup in the history of the words MLS when joined together, followed by the suffix cup. I also don't like the sort of reverse hyperbole where it's like, oh no, this was Philly's window. I could make a better argument that this was Montreal's window, because Wilfred Nancy may be out the door. They're losing Jordi Milovic. Like their entire spine is getting. And I don't know if they have but I don't know if they have a backup plan, right? Whereas with Philly, I'm pretty sure they do, and they're
just going to come back next year and finish top 3 somehow. We don't know how they're going to figure it out.
But I have more faith than with Seattle, because with Seattle, having been an active participant in watching their roster reconstruction, considering the years that we were like joined at the hip in cup finals, I was always surprised that they could make it work every single time, because it looked like their team was getting atomized every offseason. And then they found a way, losing valuable pieces that I thought were irreplaceable. They found a way. Philly, it's always like nip and tuck. You know what I mean? But I do think that there's some merit in the fact that they don't look for, or they don't feel a need for that assassin. You know what I mean? The guy that maybe comes in on a TAM deal, has some sort of fanfare behind him, doesn't play a ton of regular minutes in the season. A St. Ricketts, for lack of a better word. He doesn't have to be a Gareth Bale, right? Like just somebody that's that kind of electric sub, that can do what Bale did for LAFC. As we move to TFC, and I know we're going to do that because I can see the grin of a segue coming up. Did we all watch Federico's video to the fans?
I actually haven't yet. I kind of know what it's going to be in it.
It's Fetty being Feta.
Yeah, it's good.
It's Feta being Feta. It's unbelievable. And it suggests to me that all of our conversations about the team giving Fede more of... Am I doing an OVO again? Is it Fede? Fede?
No, that's
fine.
Fede.
Okay, because I don't want to be that possible. Okay. So Edda, the F is silent. I'm going to just be hipster about it. But, that was once Michael Bradley's job. This sort of postseason mea culpa, thanks the fans, will be better next year kind of public note. I remember Seba did it once. I know that Michael Bradley's done it a bunch of times. But they let Federico do it this time, which suggests to me that they're sort of listening to us. I mean, I'm not going to be that megalomaniacal, but they're listening to the pulse of TFC land, and they're sort of giving Fede a bit more heavy lifting with respect to being the face of the club, because it was unbelievable.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
How do you think Lorenzo feels about that?
I don't know, and we were discussing this, I think, on the episode that you missed, Mike, which is, does he like it? Do you think that he actually prefers not being the voice of the club and just letting his actions on the pitch speak for him? Or do you think he's pissed that, he came here with all this fanfare to be the man, and it's very clear that that someone's shining brighter than he is?
You guys asking me?
Yeah.
Felt like an ominous silence.
Yeah, it does.
No comment?
No comment.
No comment.
Wow. Uh-oh,
No
trouble in the
comments.
henhouse.
No
Well, how's
comments.
his
Okay.
English, Mike? I mean, can
That's
he even
another
do
thing,
what,
right? Maybe
what
that's
Fed
it.
is doing right now? I mean, that's entirely unfair. If he's upset that he didn't get to do that video, and he would have done it, with subtitles and a translator, and It's not the same thing. I mean, you look at the cut of the Feta video, it opens with him explaining that, he's not very comfortable doing it in English and he's going to do it in English anyway, which is kind of the thesis statement of the whole damn video. So
yeah, I'm not going to read too much into that right now.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how that progresses. To me, it's, my biggest sort of thing around that is, okay, if you are pushing Feta to the front, that's fine. To me, that makes sense. He is more of that personality. Again, like what we were talking about on the previous podcast was just, personality. Some people are fine being that upfront guy, right? And like, I'm okay to do all the public
shaking hands, kissing babies. Exactly.
Some players love it, and a lot of players don't like it.
Really don't.
That's fine. Really don't like it. I just don't know where Lorenzo is. Until we kind of have an idea on where he is on that, then I wouldn't spend too much time worrying about it, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, listen,
I would be okay. Go ahead.
It's a little tricky, right? Because he's beloved in Napoli, and we know he came over with the intention of being beloved here in Toronto. So I just wonder if it's also tough because he went through a lot personally this year, so you have to factor that in. So I know people are upset that he doesn't do enough on camera stuff, and maybe he doesn't connect with the fans the same way that Bernardeschi does. But if you're trying to measure yourself up to the bar that Federico Bernardeschi is, you're going to lose that battle 10 times out of 10, because Fede is like the most likable person in the world.
He's the most likable person on the planet.
You can't.
Here's my take. If and again, this is pure speculation, but if Lorenzo's mad that he didn't get that, and he's not desperately trying to learn English to the standard that Federico has done, I take issue with that, because it's like comparing apples and napalm, right? Like, and then I don't know.
I can't care. Like, I'm not saying I don't care. It's just like, look, if Lorenzo wants to learn English, he'll learn English. If he does it, that's cool. What I'm concerned about is, are you gelling on the pitch, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if you're gelling on the pitch and you're doing well, all that stuff, all that sponsorship stuff, all those messages, that will take care of itself in a way, right? And that's really the biggest thing, and I feel like that will be the biggest thing for him too, right? As he wants to be loved on the pitch first, and then all of the other stuff will happen after him. Yeah.
But if he's getting pissed off, it will affect.
We don't know that for sure. We don't know that for sure, right? Like,
I don't know. Mike just put the fear of God into me. Mikey Singh over here just put the fear of God into me.
Oh no, guys, I'm just talking. Come on.
Yeah. He's just throwing stuff out there so we can like.
That shit-eating grin. That shit-eating grin, though.
Yeah, man. I like at the end of the day, like, you know what? Trust me, he's going to be fine. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to do that in the spotlight. It's just Bernardeschi came here and he was electric right away. That happens sometimes. But offseason started now, and we're talking about like roster building for Philadelphia. Well, this club has to do a lot of roster building around Bernardeschi and Insigne to get the best out of them. I know we talked about it kind of loosely in a few other episodes, but now that the postseason has officially begun, there's a trade window open now for 48
hours.
What are the three biggest priorities for TFC this offseason? We kind of talked about them in loose ways, but if we want to put it together, what do you think the three biggest are? Mike, I'm going to start with you.
Well, Jonathan Osorio is obviously probably up there, is close to the number one biggest priority for Toronto FC. Number two, probably goalkeeping. There's like 7 priorities.
There's a lot of priorities.
You can only pick 3, man. A show can only be so long.
Number 3, your back line. And then also you need a striker, and then you need midfield depth. You need more MLS players at the rest of your positions. And then you need to figure out what's happening with Nemo. Like, it's going to be a long, busy offseason for Toronto FC.
So do we think we'll see any moves in this 48-hour transfer window?
I'd be surprised if there was moves in this 48 transfer, like because this is essentially a window before the expansion draft. This is for deals that was pre-existing or deals because of the expansion draft.
It might seem
Remember,
like some behind the table handshake, like, hey,
Yeah,
we'll explore this guy, but don't pick this guy, Like,
yeah, exactly.
Correct me if I'm
that.
wrong. This is not free agency, so this wouldn't be the opportunity to go, hey, Sean Johnson, sorry about crashing out in the semifinal round. Here's a giant bag of money. Okay, then this would just be for interleague trades, basically stuff that's been bandied about behind the scenes that now you have 48 hours to go, hey, we just made this up, we pulled this out of the blue, we're going to get this done. So sort of like a catch-all situation. I wouldn't expect anything either.
We'll see. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. There could be, I think in the past what's happened, one is, you're right, with the expansion draft, it's a lot of, hey, don't pick this guy, or hey, we'll make this guy available, we'll make a trade here, there. And then the second one is, hey, we were talking about a trade during the window, didn't work out, but hey, let's sort of pick up the pieces of that now and see what we can do, right? So that might be the one window where that might happen for TFC, but I doubt it happens right now. I think there's going to be a lot of, assessing what's going to happen in the free agent market. And of course, the big domino is, what do we do with Oso, or what happens with Oso? Because which we don't know
until after World Cup.
Exactly.
We're not going to know.
And in a lot of ways, it'll be interesting to see if Bob Bradley kind of makes a decision, essentially saying like, hey, look, we're going to do this with the thought that you're not back. And if you're back, great. But, we're going to move on getting another midfielder, or we are going to enact our plans to build around Fede and around Lorenzo. And again, if you're here, great. If you're not, okay. Because I feel like a lot of these money,
they would spend the money that they would have earmarked for him if they did.
I don't necessarily think it has to be TAM money, right? Like, I think you start looking at depth first, right? You start looking at bringing in some of those depth pieces, and then, you figure out your TAM and DP stuff based on what happens with Oso.
Yeah, Axis is talking about the Bustos tryout. I think that's really interesting because Bustos is most comfortable as a number 10, and we don't play with number 10. So the second I saw that rumor,
be a winger.
I was
he'd be a right-sided winger.
Oh, isn't that weird? Because we have no wingers at all.
Well, I see that as if you're going to play Jaden Nelson as a midfielder this season, whether it's as a starting position or as somebody coming off the bench, and you're using Bustos as depth, right? But even then, again, we're not really going to know anything about Marco Bustos until if he gets called back in January, right? This was sort of just
but do you see him as an 8 for a week, an 8-6 hybrid, or is this just him training with the team so they can take a look at? Because he's an exceptional player at a lower level in the CPL, right? Do you think he'd be happy with a Caden Chung kind of situation where he comes to TFC and sees under 500 minutes in a season? That can't be great for his own personal development, right? And it's also not his preferred position.
Big pay raise from what he's getting at CPL.
Is that enough? I thought players wanted to play. I know that they want to set themselves up for life, but I also
but they're not going to set it. They're getting paid. They're not going to get that paid. Like they're going to live and have a decent salary.
Okay.
Mikey, what do you think?
About Bustos?
Yeah, you can start there. I sort of went off in a million different directions as I'm wanting.
Yeah, I think it's a opportunity for both parties to get to know each other. As I think even the CPL press release said that. Or whatever article. I don't know if it's a press release. Yeah, Bustos. I love Bustos as a player personally. I think I've always been a fan of his for a very long time, and I think he would do well to be a depth piece in Major League Soccer. Is he okay with that? Yeah, I think he would be, as Mike alluded to. But CPL players make what, 40, 50,000? Like you're jumping yourself up to 80 something. Yeah, if that. Bustos is one of the better ones, so I'd imagine he's making.
But aren't professional athletes constantly aware of father time, and every move is measured both in terms of money.
25 years old.
Yeah, he's
also
still
in terms of what it does with respect to their career trajectory. Like no one wants to get caught in a hole of irregular minutes, kneecapping their development. Right.
I think it's like one of those situations where you kind of bet on yourself, right? Like you're gonna go to TFC and you're gonna train there.
Let me ask you guys something for Canadian Premier League perspective. Where have players who've played in the Canadian Premier League have had successful careers gone on to play other than, like, what was the highest level of Canadian Premier League's gone on to play? Like Tristan Borges when he went to Belgium and
Yeah, but he got into that was a tough situation. That was a tough situation.
That was really
Yeah.
tough. But is there another example like that where a Canadian Premier
No,
League
I
player
think
graduated?
comparable to
success,
Borges' move. Yeah.
So let's
Compared to Borges' move, yeah.
No, it's mainly been to MLS,
so it's a
right?
big
Or
win.
MLS next.
It's a big win
Bro.
for Bustos because there's only a handful of those players who make the jump from the CPL to MLS. Most of them.
And
have to
remember,
go play
he started off in MLS. This was a step down for him to CPL, right?
And if you think about like Mo Farsi, for example, who was a really good player in the Canadian Premier League, all he was able to get was an MLS Next Pro contract, right?
Yep.
So getting an MLS contract, if you're able to, I think you take that no matter what. Like that's a big win. That's security.
That's very fair.
You also
Very
put
fair.
Resume as a soccer
I'm
player,
trying. I'm
so-
just trying to sit in his shoes and weigh the potential of less minutes, less.
Yeah, I'm sure Caden Trout's season wasn't ideal, right?
Yeah, versus money, etc., etc. And I think I agree with you. I still take the bet on MLS 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, for sure.
Opposed to another year in the CPL.
I don't think he has anything else. I don't say he has nothing less in CanPL to achieve, but I mean, like, he's clearly a top player. He's already won a championship in the league. Like, really, where else? Unless, I mean, he comes to Forge, right? Like, that's the only person. But like,
he's even gotten caps with the national team.
Right, exactly, right? So he has caps. So like, from that perspective, you make that move. And here's the thing: like, if you can start to build sort of depth pieces like a Marco Bustos, like some other players that could possibly be out there, what would you define Toronto FC's a successful Toronto FC's offseason? Like, how would you define success, or how would the fan base even define success?
The
I know those are
dominoes
two
are still
very different. I know those are two very different things. But how, what would a successful offseason to you look like? Because there's so many variables, so many options.
I'm curious to Mikey's.
To me, it would be getting all the pieces that you want to get in before training camp or during training camp, at least.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, how many pieces do you think that is?
Well, that's a lot. I mean, there's going to be a lot of moving parts, and I'll tell you guys, like, there's going to be guys who are leaving the club still that are still on the roster.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So you have to replace some of those guys. Then you have to bring in the depth pieces that you want to bring in. Like, you're going to be talking double digits probably in terms of guys you want to bring in. I don't know if you're going to be able to bring in double digits, but
let's forget about the obvious areas of need, right? Our back line, goalkeeper, center forward, right? There's a potential we're losing Crescito. I mean, Mikey said it himself. Mikey dropped that bomb midweek. There's a potential Crescito retires, right? Richie's deal is not permanent yet, which means we're right back to the beginning of last season playing kids in the outside back roles, which we desperately do not want to do.
Well, Richie's here till June at least.
Yeah, Richie's here until June at least, right? Which is,
but
let's just make it permanent.
I've said this all along.
Yeah.
I believe there's something in there that they can make it permanent.
Yeah, money talks.
The World Cup, though. Richie has a great World
we'll
Cup,
see.
And then
So yeah, it's we're almost in limbo because so much of these roster moves will have to take a backseat to player performance or lack thereof in the World Cup that's coming up in less than 2 weeks, which just feels strange to say out loud. I agree with Mikey. I mean, I'd like to see the team make moves, but since so much of our moves are precluded on the performance of certain guys on the roster that are going to be featured in the World Cup, I think patience is the word of the day, unfortunately. I wouldn't expect the club to make too many big moves that would potentially take money away from the players that they would like to re-sign that want to ply their trade in Qatar. Would you agree with that, boys?
It's just Jonathan Osorio you're referring to?
And Richie now.
Well, Richie, it doesn't really affect, like, the only thing with Richie is if he has a good World Cup, does European options open once again?
Exactly.
Legitimate or European options, right? But that doesn't affect TFC's budget. He's making the same amount of money he would have made
Truth.
regardless.
But if they
right?
made the
So
move
that's-
permanent, they would have to sign him to a new contract, right? And that would change his.
No, not necessarily. I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe,
So
maybe
yeah.
you're right, but
Yeah,
I mean, I tell me I'm wrong. Do we expect TFC to make big moves before the World Cup is over?
I figure some are going to happen, right? You're going to have to get some guys in before January, right? Like there is a window between when the World Cup ends and sort of the beginning of January where nothing really happens, right? Because people are away on holidays and all that kind of stuff. So you're gonna have to sign players. You do not want to be doing all of this in January, right? That's just hectic.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to get some things lined up, especially in the free agent market, before the World Cup is done. Do I think the bulk of it's going to happen before January? No, I think you're going to get some answers, but a lot of that will sort of kind of happen in January once sort of the dust settles in the World Cup and who's where and things like that.
Cool. I think I buy that.
All right, we got a lot of different MLS silly season. So we've got a trade window. We now have the expansion draft that's coming up, which we do have to protect players from.
November.
We didn't
11th.
have anybody. Did we have any? We didn't have anybody picked last year, right?
No.
Okay, so then our players are available. I don't know who they pick, but okay, we'll see who gets selected. And then if anybody gets selected, I don't really see it either. And then,
but I mean, there's still strategy to this. You don't want to put Mavinga on there and then lose him for $50,000 in Garber bucks. You know what I mean?
why? He's out of contract.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
There's not many that you need to protect.
And I don't think.
Yeah.
And the thing,
fair point.
Pick them up in the expansion draft. You have to sign them to what they made last season, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know a lot of teams right now who are going to sign Chris Mavinga on the same money that he was on last season.
Fair.
So
yeah, this should be a stress-free expansion draft for us,
unless we expose one of the kids, right? Like I don't
think you even can. They're not eligible.
Oh, because they're homegrown.
They're not eligible. Yeah.
Never mind.
It would be an interesting list. I think we're going to have a lot of thoughts on that list. Yeah. As it rolls closer.
And then free agency is on the 15th. That opens on the 15th, correct?
The 17th. I've got.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Okay. And then but it's
16th.
It's reallocation draft is
the 17th. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, and then there's free agency that opens up once reallocation's done. So wonderful, wacky world of MLS offseason's about to begin.
Wacky,
all the drafts are happening. Super
most dramatic offseason ever. Yeah.
And TFC is going to be in the middle of it. So we'll keep an eye on what TFC is doing in the offseason. Obviously, we'll see if we can win a third offseason of the year award because I think we've won it twice. So let's go for that trophy. That'd be nice. Another, those don't count as stars on the shirt, but they should. No. All right, let's quickly go into some Canadian men's national team talk as we sort of round out the show here. Prayers up for Max Capro. Obviously, we talked about it earlier in the show. Nasty injury. Yeah, I'm really happy that the broadcast did not show it again. Which was really good because it was not good the first time watching it.
It was bad. It was bad.
But it's great to also see that they put him up on the big screen at Bank of California afterwards, celebrating with his winner's medal.
You see him hyping up the crowd as he was being stretchered off?
That was adrenaline, buddy. That's adrenaline.
Yeah.
That busted leg. Oof, but congrats to probably James Pantemis because he's probably going to get the ticket to Qatar.
It'll be Boran, St. Clair, and Pantemis.
That would be my guess. In terms of
was it Luttweiler?
Oh, Luttweiler. Okay, maybe a shot for Luttweiler, but I feel like Pantemis has been in more camps.
Me too.
Lately.
Me too. Yeah.
And he's heading off to Bahrain, right? Like he's on the roster for Bahrain. So
yeah. But so is Hassal. That was announced this morning.
Yes,
so
and Thomas Hassal from the Vancouver Whitecaps is taking Max Crepeau's spot. on the roster for the friendly at Bahrain on Friday. So good news. We're going to see the Canadian men's national team back in action against Bahrain on Friday in Bahrain. So they're using, a lot of people are asking, like, why Bahrain? Like, why are we playing? One, it's outside of FIFA window. So climate. And outside of FIFA window. So officially, you're not going to see any of the European players because they're still going to be with their club teams. But a lot of this is for the North American based players, so that those that might be having a shot to make the 2026 roster will get a match in before the team is announced. And the team is going to be announced on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. on TSN, apparently, as I'm hearing. So I got some great news about that in the outro. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But lastly, just in terms of this, wrap all the players in bubble wrap for the next.
What did they expect, man? What did they expect? Moving the World Cup cycle to accommodate Qatar, and then playing a World Cup in the middle of most players' domestic seasons. What were they expecting?
Like, obviously, from a Canadian men's national team perspective, we're talking about that. But I mean, like, some of the biggest players in the world also, like the players you want to see in a World Cup.
Yeah, I'm not even talking from a Canadian perspective. I'm talking from an international footballing perspective. It's like multiplying zeros between the fixture congestion that we've had to deal with off the back of the Pando, leading into this unbelievable shenanigans. I'm surprised anybody's going to be healthy. You look at the list of players that are injured for their respective national teams, and it reads like a best 11. Had Fonzie, knock on all the wood, but had Fonzie gone down, it's just insanity. I did cry. I was crying
on Saturday.
I was like, do I even care about? That's it. I was like, I don't know if I like soccer anymore. Honestly, like there was an hour where I was like, do I want to do this to myself anymore? Like this is years of my life, and now this stupid game against Bochum, and he's not gonna play in a World Cup. Like, who did he play against the game? It was. Who cares?
Actually, I don't even know.
Exactly. Who cares?
Talking, by the way, but but also like he goes down. Then what happens to Creepo? It's just I'm like, oh my god, right? Like you must think about other FAs around the world just looking at their players.
But you cannot ask domestic clubs in the thick of the season that are about to take a break, where everybody's going to get rusty, potentially injured, to let national team players who are traditionally the best guys on your squad because they've been selected, they've been capped by their national teams, to sit out 2 weeks of competitive football. No, it's just not going to happen.
We joke about this all the time on 442. Like, if you're one yellow card away from a suspension
and you score a goal, you're taking your shirt off. 100%.
Shirt's coming off.
Yeah,
not only that,
tarps off.
If your teammate scores a goal, you're taking your shirt off. Do whatever you can to get that.
Have you never seen the studs on my cleats before? Because here they are. I'm sliding into you. Give me that red card. Like, absolutely.
Oh man, I pulled up and I have a tight hamstring all of a sudden, guys. I can't play next game.
Yeah, I think the next 2 weeks you're going to see dark arts the likes of which you've never seen before, and it'll be
sucks though.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna have a World Cup potentially without Son. We're gonna have a World Cup potentially without Pogba.
Without beer.
No Pogba, no Conte,
no beer,
no Varane. Yeah, no beer is just that's a huge factor. There's a lot of players that are be missing, and it's the first time really because it's in the middle of the season that we're talking about injuries in this regard. There's always injuries that happens, but it's usually major injuries. Yeah. These are literally knocks before World Cup that could keep you out.
Exactly. And usually during that period, the season ends and then you have a couple of weeks, right, before you play the World Cup.
Also to ramp up training with your national side. Like,
there's nothing. There's literally the league time. You got a
there's
week
enough.
The World Cup
there's time to check in, unpack your bag, put your kit on, and go out and play in front of 1 billion.
You guys
people.
See what Messi pulled?
Mental.
Messi literally just told his coach. I mean, it helps because you're playing for PSG and it's Liga, and PSG is going to win that league blindfolded 9 times out of 10. Shout out Jonathan David. But he essentially said, I'm not playing the next 2 weeks. I'm going to Argentina now and preparing for the World Cup.
Yeah. Wow.
Because you can. That's GOAT
Yeah.
status. Like,
You
but
can't.
like,
Fuck,
but again, like, how
that's
many
GOAT
players
status.
can do that, though?
Yeah,
How many players in the world can do
Like,
that, right? GOAT
5.
status. Yeah, you can do that.
5 players in the
Ronaldo
world can do that.
Well, Ronaldo
Like
would
you
just
can't.
do
Like
it
Arsenal
anyway.
played. Arsenal played Chelsea this weekend. You can't miss that match if you're Arsenal. They're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
for the league title.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
single player in Arsenal has to go into. You can't back out of a 50-50 challenge.
Yeah.
Like you're
No.
playing for the league title.
I mean, luckily Odegaard, Norway didn't make the World Cup, and there's there's some
There
guys
you
that
go.
are. But like at the end of the day, it is mental. It's mental, and I hope that FIFA never does anything this stupid ever again. I
So
really
stupid.
like. It's so stupid, and
It's
I will
FIFA,
be
man.
celebrating
Don't hold your breath.
when people
It's
are
FIFA,
like,
bro.
when reporters are like, God, they promised air conditioning, and it's hotter than the 10th ring of hell in the stadium right now.
But they
And
do
the
have the air
players-
conditioning. I just don't know
No,
what's going to
but,
help.
but they're not working. It's not working. Like they haven't been able to figure out how to make it work.
But
So
guys, the positive,
mm.
MLS players are going to be healthy. Knock on wood,
Yeah,
they're
let's
going to be
go.
healthy.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
MLS players throughout
I
the
mean,
season.
Because we're all waiting for
it's-
Ryan Hollingshead to,
Yeah.
the US national team.
It's tough to. I mean, obviously, I'm over the moon. Like we've got a World Cup that we're playing in 2 weeks. Yeehaw! But yeah, the specifics of this are completely insane, and it's just it's not a good look for the game, the beautiful game. Hopefully the tournament will be something of quality, but it's too much to ask for these guys. And there's a Graham Reed is saying there's a FIFA corruption documentary on Netflix this Wednesday. Well, that's not today. I want to watch it after I finish today because I had a day off to deal
Don't
with
worry, there's
with my ISP.
there's a lot of look, this is maybe we'll talk about it in a future podcast. I don't want to take up too much time talking about it right now, but
Mhm.
I mean, if Canada weren't in this World Cup, I don't know if I'd be watching. And it's
It's
a
a World
little
Cup. I'm
conflicting.
going to watch it. Yeah,
I gotta
I'm going to
watch.
watch
Of course,
it. Yeah,
Canada's in.
yeah.
I gotta watch, but
No, even if they weren't, it's a World Cup. I'm watching it. But
I don't know,
Might would have
man.
watched, guys.
I
Might
don't
would
know.
have watched.
yeah,
Let's
of course
just
you
say
would have
that.
watched.
Yeah, but
You're
I
the
mean,
host of a soccer podcast. I'm not going to watch the World Cup out of spite. Whatever,
I
buddy.
know,
You're
man.
watching the World Cup.
I got
Yeah,
issues,
yeah.
but hey, North America's got issues too, and we hosted.
Yeah,
it
and
too, so.
nobody's perfect, and I can't
one's
believe I'm
perfect.
using that as an excuse because it's an evil empire. But that's besides the point. Like,
All right, boys,
like-
let's
yeah.
let's wrap it up with these last burning questions here from.
Oh, I like them.
fandom.
I like them a
From
lot.
the
Let's
fandom.
go.
So we talked about this a little bit. This comes from Dave Pinto. Just with
Mhm.
reports of Criscito likely retiring, are we in a better spot today compared to 1 year ago? He goes on to say, mainly I see us needing 7 to 8 starters, signed goalkeeper, tire back line.
Only 7, 8 starters.
1 to 2 mids and a striker plus backups, depth pieces on top of that. So we
Burn the
talked about it a
whole
little
team
bit.
down. Let's sign
Basically, let's sign
11
20 more
new
guys.
players.
But,
Yeah.
What I mean, in terms of that, I'm interested in sort of that compared to last year, because I think we've talked about this before, right? Like less, in theory, less answers to sort of address this offseason than we did last season. But
100%.
it's starting to sound like that may not end up being the case.
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions,
Yeah.
but I will see there's a lot of questions. Is Jefferson Soteldo on the books this offseason? Yes or no?
Nope.
That's the biggest.
We're already better, boys. We're already better. No, I think, Dave, listen, we're in a better place. We're in a better place. We absolutely are. We've got a year of Bob getting comfortable in his desk
we
chair.
have a head coach.
We have a head coach. He's had a year. Hopefully he's got a big list of mistakes and a big list of things to change. Again, last offseason we had a bunch of question marks besides a ton of kids. This guy's going to be the next Alphonso Davies. No, this guy's going to be the next Alphonso Davies. No, this guy's going to be the next Alphonso Davies. Now we know potentially all three of them aren't going to be the next Alphonso Davies, which I think is sitting better than we were last offseason. We made a huge splash signing Lorenzo. We've surrounded him with Berna, at least. Criscito may be gone forever, but we now have a ironed out plan. We've got a window of these guys until their contracts expire that we have to maximize to be competitive. I'd say any which way you look at where we are sitting now versus last offseason, we're in a much better place. And I don't know if you guys agree with me.
I agree with you because Bob Bradley spent a lot of this year undoing what Ali Curtis did behind the scenes, right? A lot of stuff people
100%.
don't see,
Mm-hmm.
right? And A lot of people don't know
That place was in tatters.
Pull the Jeff. Kamar Lawrence.
Yeah,
Still
nice.
on the books. Kamar Lawrence is still on the books for Toronto FC.
So is Oro.
Right, Dom Dwyer. There's still something going on there. Oro, obviously, Josie Altidore. Right, a lot of this was moving out contracts. Probably weren't going to be able to get rid of, but they managed to do that. And now heading into this season, just from a cap perspective, they're in a better place. 100%. And you also have a core of players that are in place. If you include Mark Anthony Kaye into that mix, obviously Lorenzo and Federico. Yep. God, why can't I think? There's no more, or Richie. I'll throw into that mix. So I guess that's 4 players. That's not that many, but they still have the core, and they have a bunch of young players who have a year of MLS play under their belt who are going to continue to grow and continue to develop. And from that perspective, you can see sort of a framework. Last year, you were trying to carve out framework and trying to figure out what exactly this team was going to look like. At least now we sort of know and we have an idea. But don't get me wrong, this offseason is just as important, if not more important, than last offseason in terms of getting the team back on track.
100%, because there's a lot less conjecture. You've got a lot more of what you're looking for, and so you have to hit those targets this offseason. Absolutely.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, you guys encapsulate pretty much everything I thought about there. I mean, the one thing I will say is, yes, we're better, but I mean, to me, the level's not that much better. Like, we have a manager, we have 2 DPs in that we know we can build around, and a little bit of a core, but there's so much that needs to be filled. And let's have this conversation in early February before the season starts, and we'll see where
beautiful thing is that we're going to, because we're here every week. So absolutely. Absolutely. This is my favorite. I love this one. I have a real answer for this question.
So why does it appear that TFC, basically paraphrasing this from Michael, just why does it look like we don't do as well scouting South American talent? Michael Rojas goes on to say most MLS teams have a bunch of young South American players, most of them on the cheap, quote unquote, but seems this is an area that TFC historically has been bad with. And he's talking specifically about MLS playoff teams this year. So I'll let you guys jump with that.
Okay. Wrong. In our recent history, we have gone the South American route. We tried to have a relationship with Independiente, and they wanted millions upon billions of dollars for Lucas J.H.Y. Janssen. The issue is that most MLS teams have a bunch of young South American players, most of them on the cheap. That's not how TFC does business, and that's not how we're known in the international market. We buy expensive players. So we can't have it both ways. We can't be the swoop in, but to say that we haven't explored that market is false, because we have in many ways. I mean, we tried to get what's the team that Gallardo came from? We also had a situation with them.
And Jefferson Soteldo.
Yeah. We also had a relationship with those guys. The fact is that they haven't hit because we're operating at a much different price point than most MLS playoff teams have. And I hate speaking in binary, but I'm just saying that
I also don't know if that's true. That premise MLS playoff teams.
Again, I don't like speaking in binary, and that's why I'm using the air quotes here. But I also think that TFC exists in a different tier with transfers than those teams do as well. So they're not looking to offload maybes with us. They're looking for big picture deals, because that's what we're capable of. So we don't even sit at the same table. We don't negotiate the same kind of deals. So I think it's an unfair comparison.
Yeah, I like the question a lot. It's actually something I've wondered about too, why they don't maximize that market too, because you can get players who aren't DPs, aren't allocation money players from South America that are good players. Obviously, the number of international roster spots is a huge restriction on that. And when TFC are able to go out...
That's a great point, because we have a different international roster configuration than American teams.
Yeah,
That's a
which
great
one
point.
actually benefits us now this year? So
Okay.
hopefully maybe that's something TFC will utilize. But when you are able to go to the Italys of the world and get players from Serie A, you're taking that 10 times out of 10 as opposed to South America, right?
Yep.
But I would I agree. I think TFC should explore that market for maybe some cheaper deals to get some more quality players.
I keep coming back to Lucas Janssen, which was, this was when Greg Vanney saw 3 Man City games and decided he wanted to play 4-3-3 forever. And we brought Lucas Janssen in on a loan from Independiente. We wanted to bring him in on max TAM, but the salary that Independiente wanted was a DP through and through and through and through. Do you know what I mean? I just think that's the eventuality that we face being an MLSE enterprise, which is, we can take floaters, but when push comes to shove, they're going to want money that puts them in rarefied air, and we don't have the DP spots, and we don't have the max TAM money as well.
Yeah, I think the situation's a little bit different though now, right? Like I think, and this is it's funny, Ali Curtis of all people is the one that brought this up during the pandemic, is that you're looking for market efficiencies, quote unquote, which is just really business football speak to talk about how can we find players in markets that have produced good footballers on the cheap. And right now, Argentina is kind of in that situation. There's a lot of things happening economically in the country, and specifically with the league.
Well, that's why we cleared out Serie A's cupboard, right? Like that league post,
and that's where, and I think that's what you're talking about. Like at the time, yes, Independiente de Valle could ask for DP money for Lucas Hansen, right? They can't do that now. And that's simply just due to the fact that, if you want to make a deal for a player, you're going to have to sort of play in MLS's ballpark. And the other thing is at the time, Argentina, maybe Brazil can say this still, the Serie A in Brazil, but, MLS is arguably, in terms of maybe not quality, but in terms of just stature and money, is a bigger league.
Absolutely.
And therefore, a lot of the players there now see MLS as a stepping stone to get to Europe.
But that's
elite Brazilian players don't play domestically.
No, it is happening.
We're living through that.
We are living.
Yeah,
through
we're living
now,
through
right?
it.
And that's where I think TFC is in a much better position to potentially do that than they were back in 2016.
That's a good point. This is a really interesting topic. That's a good question.
That's a good point.
We should maybe do that as a segment in the future.
I think so too. And I agree with you, boys. But I do think that, for me, it's a fool me once. Like, would you want to keep doing business with teams that just see you as a big bag of money and are unconcerned about what it does to your roster situation?
I think we're always going to kind of be seen like we throw big money around, and therefore clubs will see us as a
and then we make it a buyer's market, right? We can throw the money around that it's like, well, if South America is going to charge us Serie A prices, screw them. Let's go to Serie A, where the other people can't, right? So I think I honestly don't think that. Yeah, but Almiron was.
He's a unicorn.
He's a unicorn, and
shout out Almiron though.
Yes, shout out Almiron, but it still took him 3 seasons to get comfortable at Newcastle, right? Like, listen. You said it best, and I'm just repeating you. And the fact of the matter is that if the South American clubs see us as a bag full of money and overcharge us, why not overpay for elite players from even more elite leagues, which is what we appear to be doing, right? I think you could flip that question and say,
but Jeff, you're the one
why should go ahead?
You're the one who said you don't like talking in binary terms, right? This isn't going to happen with every single.
No, you're right. You're right. You're well put. Also, maybe our scouting just needs to be better.
Yeah, as Mike said,
maybe it's as simple as that.
Maybe it's a scouting thing. Maybe it's just a market TFC haven't explored enough. But it is interesting because
super interesting,
right? Because there are a lot of teams at MLS that are taking advantage of that market, and as Mike said, they went through a pandemic. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say a lot of those teams in MLS are taking because they have populations and that kind of cater to that, right? Too. And therefore, those players feel a lot more comfortable to go there. Whereas Toronto, yes, we know there's a lot of, South American people that live here, right? But like a lot of the markets in the US are playing up to that, right? Are able to say like, hey, you can come here and you could basically have almost
You don't have to speak
higher
English.
standard of
You can
life
speak
and also have a lot of
Spanish.
people that speak Spanish, right? So from that perspective, I think that's out there, but I think that will slowly change. And I think that Toronto FC will be willing to go to South America, but I do think they're not going to be looking for like an 18-year-old kid to develop and then potentially sell on. If they are going to go to South America, they're going to go and get a Gabigol, right? And pay that kind of money.
I agree.
Which I would love Gabigol on TFC.
Yeah.
Gabigol as a striker on TFC. Oh, that'd be amazing.
Just quickly, do you guys think, seeing that they have 2 Italians that are going to be the core of their team, that it matters if they go out and bring in players who played in different parts of the world and mesh it all together? Would you rather go get players from the same area of the world? Like, would you rather guys bring in more Italians as opposed to
considering
in South
how
Americans?
Tied to a specific tactical ideology and how proud of that ideology most Italian footballers are? I think it's a danger to model UN it. When we're trying to build a competitive team on the back of 2 Italian. Again, it is, but I do think it's a danger. I could argue the contrary. Yeah, I could argue the contrary just as easily, but I do think it's a danger. I've said as much with the case of the amazing disappearance of Jesus Jimenez's form, right? Maybe it was simply a clash of cultures there, right? The sort of the Spanish football tactical nous versus the Italian football tactical nous, which
but at
happens
the same time, sorry, but like the men's
national. No, go ahead.
Just got me thinking. My brain going here.
No, please, I love it when.
One of the biggest things working against them was the fact they had so many people from different backgrounds, and whenever they came together, there was always feuds because of that. But then John Herdman came in and said, "Hey guys,
little Jordy in his medium top." Yep, exactly. This
is not our biggest weakness. This is our biggest strength, right? Is how different we are, and we could use that. Toronto, as Mike mentioned, there are destinations in the States that are obviously more Spanish fluent, and Spanish people obviously acclimate to those areas a little bit better. But Toronto is very multicultural.
One of the most multicultural cities in the world. Absolutely.
So I wonder if the team, I'm not saying they're not doing this, but I wonder if they should embrace that aspect a little bit more.
But they do, though, right? Like they do.
They do. No, I'm not. That's what I mean. I'm not saying they're not doing it, but I'm wondering now that you have the 2 Italians here.
And I think that's a very, very interesting question.
It is, like, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
And I love it because I think it's unbelievably fascinating, and I think that there's some meat to that.
I think we found a segment for a future show.
Yeah,
I would love to bring somebody in who can speak to that a little bit more fluently from a Canadian.
Oh, amazing!
Because that would be a great conversation, because I think there's opportunity there for TFC to really sort of strike that sort of talent pool, which we really kind of only have skimmed the surface of very, very, very shallowly. Last question here before we wrap up. Just a quick, this is kind of an amalgamation of a ton of questions I got, but just any updates
not even on my rundown.
TFC, any update on out of contract TFC players in terms of if they're signing, if they're not signing, especially I got a question about Chris Mavinga. Obviously tons of questions. So that's really for Mike, right?
It would just be those 2 players. Okay,
really.
Well, the update I can give you on Jonathan Osorio is, I mean, I've said this a number of times, so not breaking news, but Osorio wants either A, a lot of money, or B, to play for a Champions League team, right? But if you're not going to get either of those, then we'll see what's next, right? We'll see what happens at the World Cup, right? The World Cup literally can make or break Jonathan Osorio's future. So we'll see. Chris Mavinga, trying to say, what can I give away here?
Just try to wordsmith this right
now.
Redact.
I have to tread carefully here. I'd be surprised if Mavinga and the team work out a deal, but I do know contract negotiations are still going on. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I don't think you're like breaking anything there, right? Like I think a lot of people do not expect Chris Mavinga to be back. I feel like that is a sentiment within TFC Live. Like
I think that ship has sailed. Yeah.
I don't think that's news to a lot to but fair enough. We'll leave it at that for the questions. Thank you everybody for submitting your burning questions this week.
Love burning questions.
There were a ton of them. I didn't get to them all.
Nice. Well, we've always got next week.
There's next weekend. We'll probably have a lot more as we're sort of getting ramped up for said World Cup. But let's outro this thing. So thank you for listening to another episode of Toronto Till I Die. We'll be back next week with another episode as usual. Over the next few weeks, we're trying to like up the follows on Twitter because Uncle Elon might make us pay for all that shit soon. So
now we're all shadow banned. That's great.
Yeah, I know exactly. Or we're gonna get shadow banned. One of the two. But give us a follow at Toronto Till I Die here on Twitter if you don't already. Tell your friends, tell your brother and your sisters too, and also give our sister show, the Tunnel Club, a follow as well at TFC Tunnel Club. And I have exciting news for those people who love listening on Twitter Spaces for TFC Tunnel Club. We will be back. Sean and I will be back this Sunday at 10 a.m. as we will be live, doing a live show of the Canadian men's national team roster drop on TSN. Nice. So right now it's scheduled for 10 o'clock. If TSN changes anything, don't get upset. We'll figure it out at some point. But Sean and I will back this weekend, this Sunday. So look out for that on all the TFC Tunnel Club Twitter profile. We'll post the shows there.
Look for it on Mastodon.
Dude, I was looking at Mastodon today. I was like, maybe it might be time.
My brain broke. My
brain
broke immediately, but I will. Once the time comes, I'll figure it out.
You'll figure out Mastodon. Yeah. Okay, let's not get into a Mastodon conversation. Okay, we're going to wrap up the show. All right, gentlemen, any last words before we head out to this week?
Mastodon.
No, I think expansion draft is probably going to be going down before the next time we see each other, if I'm not mistaken. So there will be some less content. So stay tuned, and hopefully, we're not talking about a TFC player getting picked, or hopefully we are, depending on which way you look.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's going to happen.
Who gets protected? Who doesn't? Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. All right. So for Jeffrey P. Nesker, for Michael Singh, I'm Mike Newell. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Cheers, everybody.
And baby, I'm TFC till I die.